Hello gamers, I'm Nkaziel, and in this video I will be talking about the best MMORPGs you can play right now. The future looks amazing for MMOs, especially 2023, and I will cover that in a future video. But always waiting for new releases can be tiring, and even more so when waiting for MMORPGs, which are games that take a few years to settle in the genre. MMOs in general have an overabundance of systems, and most often than not, they release with a lot of problems that take time to iron out. With that in mind, it's worth revisiting MMOs that have been out for some time, because often enough, if the developers are dedicated to their product, they end up fixing the problems the game had, and you might find yourself enjoying the game even if in the past you didn't. So in today's video we will be taking a look at the MMORPGs that have been out for some time and are still going strong in terms of population and updates. I will not go into too much detail about each MMO, and I will mostly focus on things that set them apart from other MMOs, since I believe those will be the reasons to play these games. If something stands out, you can look further into them and decide if you want to play them. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider helping the channel out by leaving a like and subscribing. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first MMORPG I want to talk about is Black Desert Online. It released back in 2014, and since release it has been the best looking MMORPG on the market. BDO is the MMO that received probably the most updates to its engine, keeping up with the times in terms of gameplay, visuals, and optimization. It plays and looks like a recently released MMO, and that is no small thing. It's arguably a pay-to-win MMO, but in recent years has seen a shift from expecting players to pay to remove an inconvenience, to paying to have some extra convenience, as well as various catch-up mechanics and systems that will help level the playing field for both pay-to-win and non-pay-to-win players. It's worth mentioning that BDO is an extremely grindy game, and while this might be seen as a negative for most players, it provides a very solid experience for those that enjoy a never-ending adventure. This means that unlike your typical MMORPGs, the experience in BDO is about the journey towards endgame, rather than the endgame itself. The progress you make does not devalue over time, so you can take breaks and come back and pick up where you left off at a later date. Unlike most theme park MMOs that wipe the slate clean with each expansion. Personally, I prefer when the time I put into an MMO does not get disregarded, but not everyone does. A side note here is that BDO is the kind of MMO that I think about when reading manga or watching anime. However, as a player you are often just a side character that has to grind through things rather than get lucky at every turn. So based on what kind of player you are, you might want to check it out. The second MMORPG I want to talk about is New World. This is the first MMO created and released by Amazon Game Studio. And being the first massive game, it came with a lot of problems, some of which are still present, but slowly they are ironing them out and it's turning into a one-of-a-kind game. New World has successfully implemented a lot of old-school systems. It has a decent story, and for me it has one of the best crafting systems that I have ever seen. The combat is quite unique for the MMO genre, being a more lenient Dark Souls-like combat, without all the punishing mechanics. Personally, I believe it's still in a very incomplete state, missing quite a few systems, and in general, missing variety, especially when it comes to PvP. But they seem to be slowly addressing all these problems, and at this time I believe it's in a decent state to be an enjoyable experience. However, I still believe it has a long road ahead before it can compete with big names in terms of content variety. It tries to cater to a lot of different types of players, and because it's doing that, the progress might be slow, but I strongly believe in a few years it will be one of the leading MMORPGs out there, because it has one of the best foundations that I have seen in MMOs. Sadly, it just needs more of what's already there. More battlegrounds, more weapons, more zones, as well as some systems that are fundamental to MMOs, like mounts and transmog. They have plans for all these, it's just a matter of time. I think it's worth checking out. You might fall into the category of people that want more, or you might find that it has more than enough to satisfy you in its current version. The third MMORPG I would like to talk about is Lost Ark. Unlike most MMOs on this list, Lost Ark is a top-down view game similar to something like League, but with a lot more depth. It has the most vertical progression of any MMO so far, meaning that for months you will have stuff to progress towards. And it has the best dungeon and raid experience by far. The main problem with it that might turn off people from playing it is the grindy and repetitive aspect of the endgame that can be circumvented by pay to win. Unlike something like BDO, when you can bypass the RNG system by simply gathering wealth, in Lost Ark you have to progress through it, and this might not be everyone's cup of tea. That being said, if you can look past this and it does not bother you, you'll be able to find a lot of joy in this game and a decent amount of challenges when it comes to endgame content. The fourth MMORPG I would like to talk about is Destiny 2. This is quite unique for the MMO genre, as it is a shooter, and a very popular one as well. It's been out for a while and it has tons of content, all the stuff that you can expect in an MMO, story, progression, as well as PvP and PvE content. It stands out from the rest by its unique gameplay and the high quality dungeons and raids. The raids are extremely well designed, coming very close to Lost Ark, and just like Lost Ark, it stands above the rest of the MMOs in terms of this. If you enjoy first-person shooters and are looking for something that brings the two genres together, you might find a home in Destiny 2. The fifth MMORPG I would like to talk about is Warframe. I know a lot of people might not consider Warframe as an MMORPG, but to me it has all the makings of one. It stands out for the absolutely outstanding story. In my opinion, it's the best storytelling I have ever experienced in an online game so far. The only downside to this is that it's locked behind progression, and I know it can be tedious to progress through the game as it can get quite repetitive. That being said, it offers a lot of variety and a lot of unique ways to play the game, basically being able to play the game the way you enjoy. It also has the only working pay-to-win model that most people seem to enjoy. And what I mean by that is that all trades between players are done using cash shop currency. This allows free-to-play players to reliably obtain almost all things in the cash shop without ever needing to spend any money. If you enjoy stories, I urge everyone to try out Warframe, as it's simply amazing. And who knows, you might end up staying for the rest of the things it has to offer. The sixth MMORPG I would like to talk about is Tower of Fantasy. Again, this is a unique MMORPG, being a gacha game at the same time, a pretty casual game and can be played from your phone as well. Making it ideal for people that only have a few minutes here and there and would still like to play an MMORPG. It has quite simple but enjoyable gameplay, but being a gacha game you'll also encounter pay-to-win elements, so you'll have to keep that in mind. It's been compared to Genshin by a lot of people, because they both are anime-style gacha games with world exploration. But Tower of Fantasy is more focused on the MMORPG aspect, while Genshin is more focused on the single player and storytelling aspect. So, if you enjoy gachas and MMOs, you might want to check out Tower of Fantasy. We're around halfway through the video and I have yet to mention some of the biggest names in the MMO genre. And I will, but I left them towards the end because I believe that while they have massive amounts of content, most people have tried them at some point or another, and I believe they have not kept up with times. None of them look and play like recently released games. That being said, they can still be a lot of fun, and because they have been around for such a long time, they have ironed out almost all of their problems. So, the seventh MMORPG I would like to talk about is World of Warcraft. It's been called the king of MMOs, and rightfully so, having massive amounts of content for people to enjoy, everything you expect from an MMORPG. This is the game that after all has set the standard for theme park MMORPGs. Its latest expansion hit the live servers recently, bringing a new class and a lot of much needed change. New flying mount system, new crafting systems, new talents, and much more. WoW for me has been going downhill for years, oversimplifying things and systems. This latest update brings new talents and a way to customize the class you play. For me, this is finally a step in the right direction, and a lot of people have been enjoying this new content so far. That being said, it's still an old game, and while they improved over years, it does not look or play like a new game, and maybe that's a good thing. A lot of us had wonderful memories in WoW, and playing it from time to time could be a wonderful trip to memory lane. This game is subscription based, on top of having to pay for expansions and having a cash shop. Personally, I never liked the subscription model, since I prefer to get something even if it's just a 10% XP boost when I spend money on a game. If you ever enjoyed World of Warcraft, I think it's worth checking out. Might be fun for a while, and who knows, maybe you will not mind the outdated looks and combat, and it will be just the game for you. The 8th MMORPG on this list is an old one as well. I'm talking about Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV has been around for over a decade, and it has seen countless updates and improvements. It's extremely popular, some even considering it more popular than WoW. While we have no exact numbers, various sources report that WoW is still the most played MMORPG, but Final Fantasy XIV is not far behind. Similar to World of Warcraft, it has a lot of very well designed systems, and it offers plenty of variety when it comes to choosing a playstyle that fits you. I personally feel that it falls short when compared to new MMOs in terms of gameplay and visuals, but it makes up for it with an amazing story that can keep the players captivated for a long time, and the pretty casual friendly raids and dungeons. That being said, if you don't mind the dated aspect of it, it will provide a good experience with plenty of things to do. Something that is worth mentioning is that Final Fantasy XIV has one of the best and friendliest communities out there, which is absolutely lovely to see, and it definitely enhances the player experience. Before I move to the next game, I should mention that Final Fantasy also employs the same subscription model as WoW, but as far as I know there is no direct way to pay for in-game currency like there is in WoW, so people might consider it a bit better. The 9th MMORPG on the list is Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 is a pretty unique MMORPG, having arguably the best mount system out of all the MMORPGs so far, and does quite a few things differently than other MMOs. Part of this uniqueness is also the combat system. On top of this, they managed to release new content without invalidating old progression, which is always hard to implement in theme park MMOs. All those are important aspects, but what makes Guild Wars 2 stand above all other MMORPGs, it's their world exploration and world events. At the time of making this video, I don't think there is another MMORPG that can compete in terms of these two aspects. Again, this MMO has been out for years, so there is no shortage of content, but it also suffers from the same problems other old MMOs suffer from, as the combat and visuals do feel a bit outdated. It does not have a subscription model, and the base game is free to play, only having to pay for expansions. I believe from time to time they have content updates that are given for free at the time of the update, and they require payment if you miss the update window, and there is a cash shop with convenience and fashion items. If you consider WoW and Final Fantasy XIV the standard for theme park MMOs, you will find that Guild Wars 2 does a lot of things a different way. I wouldn't be able to say which one of them is better, since I believe it's personal preference, but I think Guild Wars 2 is unique enough to be worth checking out. The 10th MMORPG on this list is Elder Scrolls Online. The world of ESO probably needs no introduction, as most gamers are sure to know of Skyrim at the very least, and ESO capitalizes on that, offering mountains of story-driven content for players to do. One thing that stands above all other MMOs is the side quests, And I know it sounds silly, but ESO manages to provide some of the most intriguing side quests out of all the MMOs out there, to the point where sometimes you wonder if these side quests are actually part of the main story. Most of the quests are fully voice acted, which just adds to the immersion of the game. It manages to make you feel like you're part of the world, like no other MMORPG on this list does. On top of that, it has a combat system that allows player freedom when it comes to creating a playstyle that fits you. I don't find it to be the best, but it's definitely decent enough. As I mentioned previously, most of these old MMOs, they fall short when it comes to graphics and often enough gameplay, as it's not smooth enough as we come to expect from games nowadays. Even though I think it's worth mentioning, it does not seem to bother most people. The 11th MMORPG on this list is RuneScape. I cannot talk too much about RuneScape since I have not played it enough to have an educated opinion about it. Personally, I could not get over the ugly graphics and the slow gameplay. It started as a Java browser game that evolved into so much more, having tons of content and becoming one of the most played games out there. A lot of people around the world enjoy these games immensely, and this is a testament to how good the game is for those that enjoy this kind of game. While it's most definitely not something for me, it might be for you, so it's worth checking out. The 12th MMORPG on this list is EVE Online. This is one of the oldest MMORPGs on the list, and surprisingly enough still going strong, and it's been updated countless times. Playing it does not feel like you're playing an almost 20-year-old game. That being said, it's more of an RTS space game in a persistent universe than an MMORPG, but it fits the description of an MMO. This is a sandbox for people with strategic thinking that requires from players to interact with others and build alliances for whatever goals they have set, usually culminating in massive space battles. But there is a place for solo players too, and since it's been taken over by Pearl Abyss, they have implemented a variety of changes to limit griefing of solo and people that play in small groups. Playing EVE Online feels more like running a business than playing a game, but it's definitely an interesting game and it can provide a lot of fun for those interested. So if that sounds like something you fancy, please check it out. The 13th MMORPG on this list is Albion Online. Albion Online is a PvP-focused MMORPG. It's also one of the very few crowdfunded MMOs that manage to deliver a decent playable product. It's a top-down view MMO with a similar playstyle like League. There are plenty of things to do in the game, and for those that are looking for a PvP-driven game, this might just be it. It has full loot zones and quite punishing PvP. While personally I don't like this kind of gameplay loop, I know there's a decent amount of people that do, and for those, Albion manages to deliver that experience. There are a few MMOs that I cannot fully recommend for various reasons, be it because they lack players or content, but I think they still deserve to be mentioned. Blade & Soul. This is the first MMORPG that successfully manages to break the Trinity system, offering quite unique fights. However, it ended up with a very small player base, because content updates were rare and the progression was very sluggish, and I believe it has the very bad kind of pay to win that acts as a wall rather than an option. Phantasy Star Online New Genesis. It's an old school anime sci-fi MMO. The gameplay revolves around fighting these massive bosses together with your friends. For me personally, it was just a quick dopamine rush, flying around and making yourself look cool while fighting big ass monsters, but nothing more. Star Wars The Old Republic. This title is definitely for Star Wars fans. I don't think it stands out with anything other than the excellent story that caters to Star Wars fans. If you ever wanted to play an MMORPG in a Star Wars universe, this one is for you. Neverwinter. This is currently the Dungeons & Dragons MMO. In my opinion, it does not excel at anything in particular, but it will provide a D&D experience for those that enjoy this universe. This is the list of MMORPGs that I think are worth trying out right now. Let me know which one you are playing and why. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next one, gamers!